So I'll play a variety of stuff. I kind of program in waves. I'll do. I really try to put my own stuff in there, but I have to play some other stuff as well because I've heard my own material so many damn times. So I try to mix it in there and just in program in waves in a way that makes sense. So I'm not playing just one splinter genre all night. Maybe I'll play some electro house, maybe some progressive house. Some people think I'm playing dubstep when I'm playing like a Mord Fustang track or not, but it's just electro house. It's got some wobble to it. So it's very basic. There's not a lot to say about it, but I can play some of the remixes. Let's see. This is a bootleg mix I did for Florence and the Machine. This is someone else's kick. This is a Steve Angelo kick, which he probably sampled from somebody. It just works, so it's just got this oomph to it. And a really important thing I'll do is really jump around. So if the track's running out, I'll always loop back. It's in time, like the other DJ's not ready yet or whatever. It's seamless. It's so basic. And if I'm feeling really bold, maybe I'll go back to the break and just pray that that's the right hit. I'll have to zoom in and be like, okay, shit. Another example of a very basic kind of sawtooth sound being filtered. So, and this is a good example too of producing in sort of this A-B format where the track is really about this vehicle to get to the breakdowns. So that's what I like with this, where it's just, and it took me a lot of sort of trial and error to be like, okay, well, it comes back in, but the vocal's not really going to be when it comes back in. It's just the vocal's going to sit there in its own space. I didn't have the stems for this track, so I just had to wing it, and it's the full track being sampled in here, with harp and everything in there. So I couldn't get the harp out, but it worked. So it goes from that sort of softer, dramatic, kind of floaty sound, and then it goes into sort of a Dutch thing. Where is that? A little bit of the vocal that loops in there, but it's sort of a way of cheating the vocal. That's what I call it. Just a little loop, I love looping stuff like vowels, and those just seem to work. If you loop a consonant or something, that's not really going to sound that great. But you loop that in there, it just works. That's just sort of the thing. And I just try to make all these tracks, mix friendly. Like this track, you don't have to mix it in key with everything. There isn't too much swing on the intro and the outro. I feel like that's really important to have these 16th note things. It's syncopated, but it's not like this really deep swing pocket. You can save that for later on in the track. But if you're mixing it, that it's gonna sort of put you in paint you into a corner with what you can mix into the song. So this starts out, I don't think it's not really that swingy. It's just 16ths, I think. And I'll use those little chromatic sounds or pitch sliding sounds that they'll sound like they're mixing in and the records are talking to each other, but it's not necessarily tuned to a certain key or anything. So I could mix that rising pitch sound would mix with something else. It's not like this distinct tone that's going to clash with it. So we can play a few more mixes in here. This is a remix for Adam K. chopping that vocal vowel again, one chord, one note bass line, and then opening up in the breakdown. So that's a little bit right there that I like to do, like just sort of subtly violating your anticipation of what you're expecting the track to do, where it drops out and you're like, shit, what's happening? What did the DJ do? So a little bit of silence. I did that on the Cosmic Love remix too. And it's just a little way, and you can actually add a little extra time to kind of catch people off guard, just a little bit. If you change people's expectations too much, it may be a little jarring. But I guess we can just keep going through some of these remixes. I can't explain other people's remixes. I can guess what they did on theirs. Oh, I'll play the Daft Punk remix. This is not coming out, but I'm going to be giving this away soon. So this was an official remix, but they had too many remixes, and they thought it was too clubby. This was too clubby for Disney. So, yeah, question? I don't, unfortunately. I did that one in Pro Tools. So, but it started in Ableton where I just had this Steve Angelo loop, and I had some of the stems, and then I was like, all right, well, I need to get back to I know Pro Tools better, so I did it in Pro Tools, and then, but all right, so this is the Daft Punk Solar Sailor. So this was kind of cool because I got the stems, I got the whole surround session from Tron, and to see all the synths Daft Punk were using and stuff. And it's not really clear because they had some engineers, some other people. So it was all in surround sound, so I had to fold it down to a stereo mix. And they had this really cool, they had some soft synths, but also a lot of Moog and a lot of cool analog stuff in there. So you can hear the Moog come in the first breakdown. So that's a good example of coming back in with a lot of stuff and then going sort of back to big but simple. And there isn't a lot of stuff happening when it comes back in, and people like that because it's just a big change. So and the other breakdown is very similar. Yeah, question?
You were saying how you like to leave anticipation right before the drop. I know that some people talk about having DJ-friendly structures. Do you put that anticipation after like the 16 bars a little bit, like half a bar after the 16 bars, or will you cut out the part within the 16 bars?
Oh, yeah, good question. Definitely within the 16 bars, because it'll throw it off later on, and then the elements that are being mixed will talk to each other, and then something will be off. Like it'll be, if it's 8 bars off, it's not so bad, but if it's like 2 bars, it just screws everything up. So I like to, but it's funny because I'll hear tracks people do, and it feels like they're adding extra sections to it, but I think they're just building up sooner, and then they have more of the space. So I will just cut earlier. And then a really important thing, I'm giving you guys all the secrets, the few secrets I know. I really like when you do like a white noise build, like have it ramp up, but if you have it just go, it's not a lot of impact if it just goes up and down. But if you cut it off, so there's like a quarter note or 16th note or something, then it's got the impact. Then it has this envelope that it's going to punch through. And it's so important. Like it just doesn't sound the same if it's just this smooth transition, it's just not going to have the impact. So I do that a lot, or I'll have the whole track build up and then just one line of the vocal and then boom back into the beat.
So you're saying you leave a 16th note or half note or whatever of the white noise before it drops of silence. You cut it out.
I'll cut out a chunk, and I think that's a really important part in terms of production too, and arrangement of just going in and cutting little holes and things. Cut things where the kick is hitting. I mean, that's sort of like almost manual side shading. Cut some, and that's I can probably open up a session and show you in a minute. One way I really like to do things is just have the tracks here and just start whittling it down. And I mean, it's because it's the groove in the track is all about the space. It's really about what's not there. And if you fill it up with everything, you're just not going to have any breathing room. So I like to go in and cut parts, and it just creates better contrast too. So I think for arrangements, it's really key. And I've seen some guys do this. You know, a lot of times the track will come back in and the white noise goes and it descends down. But some guys will just have it like be this short blip, so it's just like they know you know white noise is coming, but they're not going to do the whole thing, like carry out the cliched sound. So some guys do that, and it just works. I don't know why, but I do know that the white noise works for your ears because it's occupying these frequencies. My feeling, I don't know if this is true or not, but it feels like your ear likes things that have this natural contour. So like, because your ears are less sensitive to bass, and they're way more sensitive to highs, it's this contour that sort of slopes down, almost looking like a kick drum or something. And I feel like when I look at the tracks that I like the most, that I think sound the best, they have the most even slope and even structure in terms of the frequencies that are in there. And so I know a lot of guys, like J-Tech when he spoke here, was talking about notching out certain frequencies, so little nasally things that just notch them out so they don't interfere with other things in the mix. That's something I'm still working on. I mean, it's definitely a more anal way to do your mixing and things. I just try to do it by ear and just see what sounds, choose the right sounds that gel with each other. I think it's way more important to pick the right sounds, cast the right voices, get that right first, and then do what you can with EQ and things. But you will drive yourself crazy trying to make a better kick drum if the kick drum isn't there. Absolutely crazy. It's always an interesting struggle with me. I mean, this week I was trying to do kick drums from scratch, and I was just like, all right, well, I'm just going to use what I have in my library, and that's going to work for this project. Yeah. Some are both. I mean, it's some are sort of basically sustained sounds where I'm just holding down the keys and doing augmented or sustained chords, and then sometimes I'll do chord stabs. I prefer to do that, like where the breakdowns will be sustained sounds, but when the beat's in there, I have chord stabs that are playing around the kick drum, and that way it drives the beat, but you're getting the melody, you're getting the progression. And that's really pushing everything forward. I mean, because I listen to some of these tracks and I'm like, God, the only thing they have going is a kick drum and a chord progression. There's no other percussion, and it just has an amazing movement to it. I'm like, what's in there? And it's just the right timing. You know, it's swung the right way, and it's the right envelope. It's the right harmonics in the synthesis. And if the sounds aren't there, no amount of compression or tweaking is gonna fix that. But I took 2 years of piano. I'm not like a lot of guys. I always find out later, like they're classically trained. I'm like, really? Like they've been doing it for like 15 years. Like they've taken cello and now they make electronic music. I feel like that's like the cliche thing that I hear. But I don't know. I do it all by ear, and I don't get into theory. I just could never really get into theory, and it's all. I feel like piano is the easier. Keyboard is definitely the easiest instrument to play versus like I tried teaching myself guitar, and I can play a little bit, but it's so much harder to get the finger positions and everything. It's just to play a note on some instruments, it's so hard. So piano is more accessible, and a lot of guys I see, like Avicii, will just pencil in a lot of his chords and his notes. Funk Agenda, they won't even play it. They'll just pencil it in. I think it's crazy. It's not like you're going to invite people over and like, let me show you what a new thing I'm working on, and like you're not going to be able to play it live, but it works for them. Yeah.
So how do you work on your set list between gigs? Like, for example, you're playing tonight. What is the prep that you do that goes into a performance?
Well, first thing I do, I drag everything in, make sure that everything's color coded in the right key and the song title isn't too long where I can't see, that it's somebody featuring this versus some other artist. I don't need that information. So, yeah, so if you can look in here on the screen, it's very basic. I'll just have the song name and the mix, the key, and the BPM. And what happens is I kind of work in clusters. I know certain songs are going to mix with other things well. I know certain songs have worked well on tour for the past 6 months or whatever, so I'll keep some of those. It's this rotation that happens. So I try to feed in new stuff, but I don't want to bring in too much new stuff that's untested. So I rotate in when I'm like, all right, I'm tired of playing this, or this isn't working. I bring in something new, and then I bring in new productions to try out and just see how they work. So I'll spend a couple hours in the hotel before a show and kind of go through and just say, because you get bored with the same music. It's like new music is the lifeblood of your DJ set. So I play, I sort of have ADD DJing. I want to play all these different genres and make it work. But there's a lot of pressure to play all your own stuff, which a lot of guys do, which is cool. But I've heard the song so many times. So I like to play other people's remixes of my stuff. I like to play my new productions. But people want to hear what they're familiar with. So you have to do that. So the trick is to just make a lot of different mixes of the track. I know Cascade will do like 10 mixes and just be like, all right, I'm going to play the more Dutchy one or the more progressive one for this course of the night, which is crazy. 10 mixes? I'll do like 3 maybe if I'm feeling crazy, So that's an effective way to do it. And it's like, why not? It's kind of fun. You'd think it would be really tedious remixing your own stuff, but I love doing it. I'm going to play one tonight that I did for Bodywork, which is the next single, and it's fun. Any other? Yeah, in front.
I'd be curious how you'd approach like the arrangement and structure for a poppier song, in addition to like you showed us a couple like club structures. Like, how would you go about that? Because I have like no concept of how that would be.
It's hard. Well, especially when like the vocals are recorded. The song's like 80 BPM, and you pitch it up, and all the vibratos sound like chipmunks, and the label's saying more vocal, and so I did a lot more pop remixes in the past. Like I did Madonna and Katy Perry and all that stuff, and with that it was like put the vocal's got to be front and center. So that's got to be maybe in the breakdown or repeat the chorus when the beat comes back in. It is a little different, and the vocal has to shine. You can't go crazy underground with it. And a good example was actually Stevie Nicks was hiring people for remixes, and she turned down 6 remixes. And Warner Brothers called me up and said, she's turned down everything we've gotten for this project, and she wants something that uses the stems. Like all these guys are using, synth pads and all these things. She's like, she wanted somebody to keep the song, have an updated version of the song, but have it not be totally remixed. So I kind of thought about it for a while, and eventually I did that. It was the track Stand Back, and I got all the stems where she's like knocking on the microphone, and there's all this background noise, and like 30-year-old recordings. And it worked out. I just did something that was a more modern update, and I had to take that different approach. Usually I don't do that, though. Usually I won't cater something to the art, thinking, oh, I think the artist will like this. That's like path to failure. Sometimes you obviously do have to cater things and conform some of your projects, but you really got to go with your gut, and then people are hiring you for your sound, and they need to respect that. And if they want you to do a mix that's like somebody else, say, go hire them. But they will. That happens a lot. You'd be surprised. They want you to do it on spec, for free, with very little chance of getting. And they didn't say, no, we don't like it. So you got to do your own thing. In the back, yeah. I have Ozone, and I really like the Waves SSL. I don't have it in this session right here, but the Waves SSL and just a little bit of gentle compression, a couple dB, slow attack, fast release. And yeah, it's all about the gain reduction and just to see how much that's moving the meter. So a little bit of that, kind of tighten it up and gel everything together. And then Ozone 4, I use it on Intelligent 2 mode, which is really good, and just really push it, really crank the input. Because all the tracks, whether I'm in Pro Tools or Ableton, the faders are down -6 or -8 from the get-go. And maybe I'll bring them up a little bit later on, but like I was saying earlier, I bring it up on the other side of the fader, and then really hammer it with a limiter. Otherwise, you're battling, peaks in and out. So, but I do like PSP Vintage Warmer is really good. I do think T-Rax is really good. I know Wolfgang Gartner uses T-Rax, loves that. The Data Life plugin is really good. Sausage Fattener, these guys are hilarious. Yeah, that thing's great. And I think a really important thing to keep in mind is a plugin doesn't have to be expensive to be good. Some of the best ones, for a while I was buying stuff, I was like, if it's under $200, I'll get it and I'll just try it, or under $100. And there's so much good stuff that's cheap. So, and I just, when I'm using it in Pro Tools, I have to wrap it, make it an RTOS wrapper and put it in there. And but yeah, there's tons of good cheap VSTs. Yeah.
Do you have any stems released for remixing?
Yes. Yep. There's a bunch. There's a remix pack for I've Had Friends for the past few singles. So, Longest Road, they're kicking around somewhere, but Friends was the last one. It's on Beatport. What sucks is the label wants to charge for the stems, and I don't really have a say in that, unfortunately. I would prefer them to be free, but record sales.
Also, how do you work with vocalists, and how do you choose your vocalists and get in touch with them, and how do you know they're compatible for your music?
Well, I have kind of like a list. I mean, when I start an album process, I'll have my wish list of vocalists, and like right now, you like Adele or Sia or somebody, it'd be amazing. And you go after who you can get, and a lot of people will say no, and surprisingly, a lot of like famous people will say, okay, yeah, let's do it. But I hear that voice in my head. After I hear an instrumental, I just have to kind of think, who would be right for this? And it's really hard because sometimes you're like, boy, I wonder if I sent this to the right people. Like if I sent the wrong song to the wrong singer, you could be missing out on a really good opportunity. But I always think back. I'm like, well, what if I didn't send Longest Road to Lissy, or it would have been a whole other scenario, a whole other singer.
It seems like your new single In the Air, you did something that you put something over the vocal that almost gives it it almost seems like it's snapping to a note or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, good ears. I don't know if there's sidechain on it, but I used Wave's vocal rider on it. And that did something where it just raised up the sort of the sawdust in her voice. Yeah, I mean, there's auto-tune on it and things like that, but it moves around because it's being sidechained to the instrumental track. So the instrumental is the vocal fader is riding based on the instrumental, responding to the rest of the music, which is such a cool plugin, but it can get very complicated and difficult to mix stuff down if you're not doing it right. Like some guys will do it without the sidechain, so it's just self-regulating. But if you're not careful, you can. If you want to like balance your mix, it's really hard sometimes. Where the fader is set to this way, but the best way is just go in and fine tune it, and it's very easy to make a session more complicated than it needs to be. Yeah, so I definitely preach the whole idea of simplicity. A lot of producers were showing me recently in Ableton. They're like, yeah, we only have about 2 plugins on our tracks. It's auto filter for either high pass or low pass, not for the actual filter effect, but just a sort of an EQ thing, and saturator. I was like, really? That's all you have in your whole thing, like for each track? I know deadmau5 uses a lot of stock plugins from Ableton, and keeping it simple will help you in the long run.
What are your podcasts look like? Are you using Ableton right now since you're on the road to do that?
Yeah, I can show you the podcast session if you want to see. Yeah, I mean, there would be no way I could do the podcast without Ableton, and now I do a different version for satellite radio for XM, for Sirius XM. We're just starting a new show. So, yeah, and I have to be able to do that remotely. So the new battle is now, okay, well, I had this nice mic and preamp and compressor, all this analog gear, and I have to find a way to make it sound that good on the road with a USB mic. So that's going to be interesting, which I think it's possible. So this is the podcast. You might call this cheating, but I call this efficiency. So you got just fades and I have so I do this in here and then I bring it in Pro Tools and do the voiceovers and the sweepers and all that. So yeah, it's just a faster radio. This is all done on the plane typically. But the fades go down from both tracks. Oh, this is really key. I start the music tracks, even though they're maxed out and limited, whatever, I have both of them at -6. Because when they come together, they're going to start peaking at some point, even with the fades. I don't use any EQ in here. I mean, when I'm DJing, I use EQ for sure. But with this, I'll show you. What's a good example here? It's a Wolfgang Gartner going into Martin Solveig mashup. So it's going down, from -6 from its initial state to -10. Sometimes it's not that dramatic. Sometimes it's just 2 dB. And a lot of tracks, everyone's starting their tracks with a filter on them, or just with a small kick. A lot of guys are doing that, and then coming with a big kick after the first breakdown, or 32 bars into it. So I think with this one, it starts out like a small kick. Let's solo that. Yeah. This guy knows how to engineer a track, Hardwell. Holy shit. So the big kick comes in, 32 or 64 in there somewhere. So let's see if I got any other examples. Yeah, so basic fades in there. I don't do the auto fade thing at all, just manually like that. And really good tip. One thing I like more on the production side is, like, if you want a really nice swell and you don't want to take the time to, you don't want to draw it in, you don't want it to be a linear one, just use that controller, get it in there, and then fine tune it and smooth it out. I mean, it's amazing. If you want that exponential curve, so it just swoops in like whoosh, instead of a linear, boring fade. So I'm trying to do more of that, more of these exciting, kind of more dynamic automation. I've even taken graphics tablets and gotten a pen and done it like that before. It doesn't work very well with Ableton, but in Pro Tools it works. So you just use it. It's like a mouse. So. Yeah. First step was having a plan and being like, this is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to pay for it and make a living at it. And I looked at other people that were doing similar things like Cascade at the time. And I think even at that time when I was just starting to go full-time, Cascade was still huge then. I mean, he's like kind of the Elvis of house music right now. But he was like still doing 100 shows a year probably when I was just getting started. He's over 40. I mean, I turned 30. Taken me, and things just have gotten crazy the last 4 or 5 years. But there's a long period of time where I'm just, it definitely didn't feel like a hobby, but it wasn't paying like a full-time job, and that transition took a while. So it was a matter of having that plan, reading that book, 4 Hour Work Week. I literally stopped reading the news, and I would find out news from my girlfriend or whoever would tell me important things I need to know. But most of the news is just, I hate to say it, it's a waste of time. It's a lot of bad news. It's disasters that aren't relevant to your life. So you may disagree with that or not, but a lot of it's just not relevant, and you can find your information later on. So I keep a low information diet, and just do that, and really stay focused. And you're gonna have to make a lot of sacrifices. You may lose some friends because you don't have time to hang out with everybody. But I mean, what's more important, like doing what you love for a living or hanging out with a friend that, so you got to get those priorities straightened out. But I definitely have a lot of friends that are they won't call anymore because they're like, we know you're on the road, like what's the point? But so when you start out, I'd say you need to taper down and have money saved up. So it's sort of like, I mean, not everybody can do it for a living. You see a lot of new stars come up that do it really quickly. Guys like Skrillex, what is he, 23? Afrojack's 23. Avicii's 21. Don't be frustrated by those ages, and don't compare yourself, because it's like you can blow up at any age, unless, I don't know, if you're in your 60s, you may not have the most burgeoning like house music career. David Guetta's, in his mid 40s, and he's been big for a long time, but it took him a long time. So don't be discouraged by the people that are, like Porter Robinson is 19. I think he just turned 19. But they all started really early. They started when they were 11 and 12. I started when I was 12, but it took me a lot longer. So, but for that beginning stage, I feel like it's really important. I mean, you can copy other producers, creative wise, you can copy other guys, but you got to build your own style. You got to be making music that really stands out and makes people go, "What did you just play right now?" Don't just make stuff to blend in with the pack or imitate, and don't do it for the wrong reasons too. Like if you just want to do it for the limelight, it's not a good reason. I mean, it's your work ethic is going to be fueled by doing what you're passionate about. So you don't mind working 12-hour days in the studio, but if you don't feel passionate about it, that 12 hours is going to be pretty tedious. It's a lot of time in front of the screen, so you got to love what you're doing, and you got to love it with all the air travel and crying babies. So anyways, back to sort of preparing. I would say have that plan in mind. I keep like ridiculous to-do lists. Like I don't have them here with me, but I just go through sheets and sheets of legal paper, just writing down all my ideas, everything that's got to be done, everything that's a priority, and I just do that every day, and that has been essential. So I do that, do the morning pages now and then. That helped me get out of sort of the day job because that was just a good way to vent about how much I hated my job and how to plan. You kind of like ask questions like, all right, when am I going to get a booking agent? When am I going to get a manager? I had to piece together this whole team myself. Like nothing fell in my lap. Some guys get really lucky and they just, they get management, they get this amazing team immediately. And I had to kind of convince my manager to be like, hey, I think we can make some money doing this. I think you'd be the right person, to be the right partnership. And it worked out, 4 years, 5 years later. But you have to do it all yourself first. That's key. And then you appreciate that later on when you do have a team. So when you do have a dedicated booking agent who's, yelling at people at the phone, you don't have to be doing the yelling. I was doing street teams for a marketing company. So, yeah, marketing. That's what I went to school for. I went to Emerson College in Boston, and my job was to do like Missy Elliott's online street team and Rock the Vote and different bands. And then eventually they got bought out by this huge corporation and kind of cashed out. But they were starting to do washing machines, things like that. So didn't really want to do viral marketing for washing machines. So I left. I did. I saved up some money. Kind of got poached by another company. Worked part-time for them, but the part-time thing doesn't really work because they keep going. Well, we want you to work longer hours and do more, and they sucker you in with the idea of this idyllic lifestyle that you can work 3 days a week, 2 days a week, but no boss in their right mind will let a good worker just work that. They want you, full time. So they kept trying to offer more money, and I just saved up money from this sort of part-time job, saved up a year's salary, which at the time was 30 grand. It took a while. The starting job was like 20, I was like doing nothing. I was a receptionist at the marketing company, and then worked my way up to being a street team coordinator, and then saved up 30 grand, and that got me through the tough times. So just had to eat at Trader Joe's, and not that that's bad. I still do that, but you got to be smart with your money, and maybe not get a $5 latte every day if you can. From remixes, yeah. It wasn't a lot from like record advances, but yeah, from the start, it was funny. I started doing remixes. My parents, even when I was, 14, and I was like 16, I did a remix and started to get a little money for gear from that. My parents were like, "Are you a drug dealer or something? Like, what's going on here?" That's when I was doing like $500 remixes. But yeah. It totally depends. I'm just really not focused on remixes, but the high rate is like 7 or 8 for a mix, 7 or 8,000. But now I'm just really selective. I just don't take on a project unless it makes sense. I need to spend more time on originals because the time at home is so precious. And hopefully I'll have a functioning studio soon. Right now it's just headphones and a rack of gear. I would say 70%, 60% touring. Yeah. Yeah, you can do it. It's more work for production. Production is like the lost leader. It's like the CDs at Best Buy that get people to buy the washing machines. It's your calling card, but that drives everything. It fuels everything. So if you stop making music and you just keep DJing, it's going to run out, for sure. Well, there were a couple of different tipping points. I would say, like, one definitely is Deadmau5. I hired him to do a remix back when he was asking for like $2,000 for a remix, and then that jumped to like $6,000, and he was just blowing up at the time, and that sort of gave me permission apparently to be like, all right, well now we'll listen to you. Now it's like people would take, we're like, I mean, I had a pretty good career before that, but that's when it was like, okay, things got crazy, and then all the bookings and things like that. So that was the longest road getting a remix of Deadmau5. Before that, it was a bootleg album. It was called Cease and Desist. So I did all these remixes, for free, and they were just the stems of songs, or not stems, the original songs. And I would filter out the drums on a Coldplay track and put in my own beat. And I did a remix for Tegan and Sarah, for Imogen Heap. It was the first like white label album, and that put me on the map as a remixer. So I cut my chops kind of doing the remixes, and then the remixes built that production experience to do better original work. The stuff I did when I was first starting out, like in 99, 2000, was more deep, much more deeper stuff. And that stuff it's cool. It just doesn't have quite the same impact that I feel like I have now with these tracks that are more main room. So it's been a constant evolution, and you hope you don't lose too many fans when you change your style, but it's always been about the song, and it's taken me a long time to get good at that, to build these key songs where you're just like, that's a vocal that's going to stick in your head. It's got a hook that you're not going to forget. Yeah. A couple more questions, then we got to wrap up. Yeah. Okay.
What do you think the key to a long shelf life for a dance track is? With songs coming and going so quickly, what are some things that really stick, to you?
I think, to me, it's the vocal. I mean, I think it's really tragic that even when I do these instrumental tracks, I'm kind of like, well, what is the shelf life going to be on it? It's got to be, it's got to really have a memorable lead. It's got to do something different. I mean, there's just so many, like, how many swingy tech house tracks can you have, or how many progressive 3-chord progressions can there be? It's got to stick out. I guess it's hard to define, but look what guys like Wolfgang Gartner are doing, where even if you don't like what he's doing, it's so different from everything else. And then you got so many people imitating them. It's like have each track be original and take it to the next level, but not be a formula or copy of what you're doing. And I think the only way to do that is to avoid being derivative. So if you're gonna steal from or copy other things, copy a lot of different artists. And so it's creative inspiration if it's multiple sources, but it's theft if it's one source. So don't copy like two people. Like take 5 or 7 influences and mesh them together in your own way. And then what brings them together is your signature. So I think that's really important. Yeah.
Cool. One last question, and then we can wrap this up.
Yeah.
I'd be curious about if you were going to approach a fairly well-known vocalist right now and ask them to sing on a track of yours. Would you ask them to do it on spec, or would you pay them in advance, or?
Some of them are a little picky, and they just want some upfront money if they don't know who you are or what you do. It's like, what do we do with Tegan and Sarah? It was like we didn't have to. They were really cool the whole project. I mean, they make ridiculous money playing live, like 6 figures or something. It's way more than I make doing a show, and it's like to them, it's sort of. It's a labor of love with good music. They know it's going to carry, and they play the song that we wrote on their tour when they're playing live. They play it with their band, which is so cool. Like that never happens. Like I don't think they even did that for the Tiesto song either. But some of them do want in advance, and some of them want more on the back end, and they know that later on they'll make more off of it. But usually it's like a couple grand or something for a vocalist, and then they get just a little something to live off of. And if it's like an up-and-coming vocalist, but yeah, so far everyone's been pretty relaxed and cool. It was tricky, with something like In the Air, you got 5 different people on it, so that got split up pretty good. Yeah, I'm gonna make no money off of that, but yeah, great.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Big ups to Morgan for taking the time to do this.